I am Tara Holloway, 26, and literally last weekend my role as the family's quiet protector, yeah, it totally backfired. The fragile piece I'd worked my butt off to keep solid for my son Jesse, it blew up into a full-on nightmare at our so-called family reunion at my parents' house. My sister Lauren, the one we all know too well, sprayed perfume in Jesse's eyes on purpose and demanded I laugh it off like it was nothing. When I clapped back, shielding my screaming 4-year-old, the room went dead silent. "You're overreacting, Tara," Lauren yelled, with my parents and cousins staring like I'd just slapped her. But here's the truth. Their cruelty didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back. I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost unreal what I'd do once I made that decision to walk away. The air in my parents' dining room was thick with the smell of roasted chicken and judgment. I stood there, my hands trembling as I pressed a damp cloth to Jesse's red, tear-streaked face. His little sobs stabbed at my chest, each one a reminder of how small he was, how defenseless. Lauren lounged against the table, smirking, her manicured nails tapping the glass of her wine flute. "It's just a little perfume, Tara," she said, her voice dripping with mock innocence. "He's fine, stop making a scene." My mother, perched at the head of the table, sighed heavily, her lips pursing like she'd tasted something sour. My father didn't even look up from his plate, just kept cutting his chicken, the knife scraping the porcelain in a slow, deliberate rhythm. My cousins, Mark and Emily, snickered, their eyes darting between Lauren and me like they were watching a cheap reality show. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the wine bottle from the table and smash it against the wall, just to make them feel something. Instead, I knelt beside Jesse, whispering, "You're okay, buddy. Mama's here." His tiny hands clung to my sleeve, his trust in me absolute despite the sting in his eyes. That trust. It was everything. It was the only thing keeping my feet rooted to the floor, instead of bolting out the door right then. But bolting was exactly what I'd do. Just not yet. I'd spent years swallowing their barbs, their dismissals, their insistence that I was too sensitive or too dramatic for daring to call out their behavior. Growing up, I was the odd one out. The kid who'd rather read about psychology than party, the one who got pregnant at 21 and somehow became the family's cautionary tale. Lauren, 2 years older, was their golden child, poised, charming, always knowing the right thing to say. She could do no wrong, even when her pranks left bruises, physical or otherwise. That night, though, something shifted. Jesse's cries weren't just a sound, they were a line in the sand. I lifted him into my arms, his weight grounding me as I faced them. "This isn't a joke," I said, my voice low but steady. "You don't get to hurt my son and call it funny." Lauren rolled her eyes, tossing her hair back. "Oh, please, he's not made of glass." My mother chimed in, her tone sharp. "Tara, you're blowing this out of proportion. Sit down and eat." My father finally glanced up, his brows knitting together. "Let's not ruin the evening, all right? Ruin the evening." As if I was the one who'd turned a family dinner into a battleground. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the familiar urge to shrink, to apologize, to smooth things over. It's what I'd always done, kept the peace, no matter how much it cost me. But Jesse's fingers curled tighter around my neck, and I saw it clearly. Staying silent meant letting them hurt him again, and I'd rather die than let that happen. I straightened, holding Jesse close. "We're leaving," I said. The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone braver. Lauren laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "Good luck out there, Tara. You'll come crawling back." My mother's face hardened, and my father just shook his head like I was a child throwing a tantrum. My cousins didn't say a word, their smirks fading into something uneasy. I didn't care. I grabbed Jesse's coat from the rack, my hand steady now, and walked out into the cold night air. The gravel crunched under my sneakers as I strapped Jesse into his car seat. His sobs had quieted, but his eyes were still red, his lashes clumped with tears. "Mama, why's Aunt Lauren mean?" he asked, his voice so small it broke me. I didn't have an answer. Not one a 4-year-old could understand. Instead, I kissed his forehead and said, "We're gonna be okay, Jesse, just you and me." As I pulled out of the driveway, the house's warm lights fading in my rearview mirror, I felt a strange clarity, I wasn't just leaving a dinner, I was leaving them, their cruelty, their laughter, their refusal to see me. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to build something better for us. Something safe, something real. And deep down, I knew I'd make them regret ever thinking they could break us. The drive home that night blurred into a haze of streetlights and silent tears, Jesse finally dozing in the back seat with his thumb tucked in his mouth. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached, the leather creaking under my fingers. I kept replaying the scene in my head. Lauren's smirk, my mother's sigh, the way my father avoided my eyes. It wasn't new, this feeling of being invisible, but tonight it hit harder, like a dam breaking. As the miles ticked by, memories flooded in, unbidden and sharp, pulling me back to all the times they'd made me feel like I didn't matter. Not just tonight, but for years. It was like my mind was forcing me to face it all at once, piecing together why I'd stayed so long in their shadow. I thought about my high school graduation first. I'd worked 2 jobs after school to help pay the bills when Dad lost his job, all while keeping straight A's and taking care of Lauren's messes. Like the time she snuck out and I covered for her, lying to our parents with a straight face. On graduation day, I walked across that stage in my cap and gown, my name called with honors. But at the family dinner afterward, no one mentioned it. Mom fussed over Lauren's new haircut, how it made her look so professional, even though Lauren had dropped out of community college twice. Dad slapped my brother Mike on the back for landing a spot on the varsity team, even though it was just bench warming. I sat there, my diploma folded in my lap, smiling through gritted teeth as they toasted Mike's bright future. When I tried to share my acceptance letter to the local college, Mom waved it off. "That's nice, Tara, but let's not overshadow your brother's big day." My fingers twisted the napkin under the table, shredding it into tiny pieces, while Lauren whispered to Mike, both of them stifling laughs. I felt small, like my achievement was just background noise. Then there was the day I told them I was pregnant with Jesse. I was 21, scared out of my mind, but determined. I'd been dating his dad for a year, but he bailed the minute the test came back positive. I sat my family down in the living room, my hands clasped in my lap to hide the shaking. "I'm keeping the baby," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want to do this right." Mom's face crumpled, not in support, but disappointment. "Oh, Tara, how could you be so irresponsible?" Dad just stared at the TV, remote clenched in his fist, not saying a word. Lauren leaned back on the couch, crossing her arms with a smug grin. "Well, that's one way to ruin your life." Mike chuckled, avoiding my gaze by scrolling on his phone. No one asked how I felt or offered help. Instead, they spent the next hour talking about Mike's promotion at his entry-level job, how he was climbing the ladder. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door and sliding down the wall, my sobs muffled by my sleeve. My fingers traced circles on the tile floor, grounding myself as I whispered promises to the baby bump that wasn't even showing yet. I'd be better for him. I'd make sure he never felt this unseen. Flash forward to Jesse's first birthday. I'd scraped together enough from my waitressing gig to throw a small party in our tiny apartment. Balloons bobbed from the ceiling, and I'd baked a lopsided cake myself, frosting it with shaky hands after a double shift. My family showed up late, complaining about traffic. Mom handed me a generic card with $20 inside, her eyes scanning the cramped space with a frown. "This place is cozy," she said, her nose wrinkling. Dad plopped on the couch, grabbing the remote without asking. Lauren arrived empty-handed, snapping selfies with Jesse like he was a prop, but when he started fussing, she shoved him back to me. "He's your problem," she muttered. Mike didn't even come, too busy with his important sales meeting. As Jesse smashed his little fist into the cake, giggling with icing on his cheeks, I beamed, my heart swelling. But when I tried to share how I'd enrolled in online classes for child development, hoping to understand parenting better, Mom cut me off. "That's ambitious, Tara, but Lauren just got that new job at the boutique. Isn't that exciting?" Lauren preened, twirling her hair, while Dad nodded approvingly. My hands froze mid-clap, the joy leaking out of me like air from a balloon. I busied myself wiping Jesse's face, my cloth dabbing harder than necessary, as if I could scrub away the hurt. Even smaller moments piled up, like the time I won Employee of the Month at the diner. I'd framed the certificate, hanging it on my fridge like a badge of honor. when they came over for dinner, my treat, cooked from scratch despite exhaustion, Dad glanced at it and snorted. "Cute, Tara. But Mike just closed a big deal, real money there." Lauren picked at her food, complaining it was too salty, her fork clinking against the plate in irritation. Mom changed the subject to Lauren's latest date, gushing over details. I nodded along, my smile plastered on, but inside, my stomach twisted. My fingers drummed the table edge, a silent rhythm of frustration. Why was my hard work always eclipsed? Why were their successes, Lauren's fleeting jobs, Mike's average promotions, paraded like trophies, while my quiet victories, like keeping a roof over Jesse's head alone, were ignored? These memories swirled as I turned into our apartment complex, the engine humming softly. Jesse stirred in his sleep, murmuring something incoherent, and I reached back to adjust his blanket, my touch light. Pulling into the parking spot, I killed the ignition and sat there, forehead against the wheel. The favoritism wasn't random, it was a pattern. Lauren and Mike fit the mold, charming, conventional, never rocking the boat. Me? I was the glitch, the young mom fighting upstream. They'd celebrated Lauren's high school cheerleading captaincy with a party, but my straight-A report cards got a pat on the head. Mike's first car was a family gift. I bought mine with saved tips, and they called it practical. My nails dug into my palms now, the sting a welcome distraction. How many times had I bitten my tongue, convinced that proving myself would make them see me? But tonight, with Jesse's eyes still puffy from Lauren's prank, I realized it never would. They didn't ignore me by accident, it was choice. And in that realization, something hardened. I unbuckled my seatbelt, the click echoing in the quiet car, and carried Jesse inside, his head lolling on my shoulder. Laying him in bed, I watched his chest rise and fall, vowing silently, no more invisibility. I'd build us a life where we shone without them. And someday, they'd feel the weight of what they lost. That vow hung in the air like a promise I couldn't break, staring at Jesse's peaceful face under the dim nightlight in his room. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen, but my mind raced, a storm of what-ifs and hows. I closed his door softly, the latch clicking with finality, and padded to the living room, sinking onto the worn couch that sagged under my weight. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Texts from Mom, probably demanding I apologize, but I ignored it, my thumb hovering before I powered it off. No more. That was the spark, the aha that hit me like a freight train. I didn't need their approval to heal us. I could build something stronger, something secret, just for Jesse and me. But where to start? My eyes landed on the stack of parenting books on the shelf, dog-eared from late nights reading after shifts. Child trauma. That phrase echoed from a chapter I'd skimmed weeks ago. If Lauren's cruelty had scarred him, I had to fix it. No, not fix. Understand, protect, heal. Right then in that quiet moment I decided, therapy for him, education for me. It would be our hidden fortress, brick by brick away from their eyes. I grabbed my laptop from the side table, the screen's glow harsh in the dark room. My fingers trembled as I typed, child trauma therapy near me, the keys clacking too loudly. Results popped up. Clinics, articles, forums of moms sharing stories that mirrored mine. One post caught my eye, a woman describing how her kid's minor family incidents led to nightmares, trust issues. Jesse hadn't said much yet, but his whimpers in the car replayed in my head. I bookmarked a local therapist's site, Dr. Elena Ramirez, specializing in kids under 6. Her bio mentioned play therapy, helping little ones process without words. My heart pounded as I filled out the intake form online, my cursor hesitating over the submit button. What if this exposed my failures as a mom? What if they judged me for staying in that toxic house so long? But Jesse's red eyes flashed in my mind, and I clicked. Done. Appointment set for next week. My hands shook as I set the laptop down, wiping sweaty palms on my jeans. This was step 1. Real help, not the band-aids I'd been using. But therapy cost money, and my waitressing tips barely covered rent. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling cracks that spiderwebbed like my fractured life. Education, that was the key. I'd always loved learning about minds, how people tick, but college felt like a dream deferred after Jesse. Now, it was necessity. I pulled up online courses, free ones from community colleges and platforms like Coursera. Introduction to Child Psychology and Trauma, the title jumped out. I enrolled on the spot, my mouse clicking furiously. The syllabus promised modules on attachment, resilience, PTSD in kids, perfect. But as I read the requirements, readings, assignments, hours per week, doubt crept in. How would I juggle this with work, Jessie, everything? My fingers drummed the armrest, nails bitten short from stress. I pictured Lauren's smirk again, her casual cruelty. No, this secret project would be my weapon, hidden until it was unbreakable. The next morning came too soon, sunlight filtering through thin curtains as Jessie tugged my sleeve. "Mama, eyes hurt," he mumbled, rubbing them with chubby fists. I scooped him up, his warmth against me, a reminder of why. We ate oatmeal at the table, my spoon stirring absent-mindedly while I planned. After dropping him at daycare, where the teacher noted his puffy eyes with concern, I headed to my shift, but my mind was elsewhere. During lulls between tables, I snuck peeks at my phone, reading the first module on trauma signs, withdrawal, aggression, fear of certain smells. Perfume. My stomach twisted as I recalled Jessie flinching at a customer's scent. I jotted notes on a napkin, folding it into my apron pocket like a talisman. Days blurred into a rhythm of intensity. After work, I'd pick up Jessie, make dinner, simple pasta, his favorite, and settle him with blocks while I studied. The aha deepened each night. Trauma wasn't just big events, it was the drip-drip of neglect, like my family's invisibility toward me. One evening, as Jessie built a tower, it toppled, and he burst into tears, not normal kid frustration, but deep sobs. I knelt, remembering Dr. Ramirez's email tips pre-appointment. Validate feelings. "It's okay to be sad when things fall," I said, my voice soft, hugging him close. His little arms squeezed back, and in that hug, I felt the struggle's weight. This was hard, balancing exhaustion, guilt for not seeing it sooner. My eyes burned from screen time, shoulders aching from hunching over books. But each lesson built me. Learning about cortisol spikes in stressed kids, how therapy rewires brains. I practiced breathing exercises on myself first, inhaling deep as doubts whispered I'd fail. The first therapy session was a gut punch. Dr. Ramirez's office smelled like crayons and calm, toys scattered on a rug. Jessie clung to my leg, eyes wide. "It's safe here," she said gently, kneeling to his level. I watched from the corner chair, my hands clasped tight, knuckles white. She used puppets to reenact accidents, and Jessie's puppet cried about mean sprays. My throat tightened as he nodded, his voice tiny. "Auntie bad?" Dr. Ramirez glanced at me, her nod reassuring. Afterward, she pulled me aside. "He's resilient, but consistent support is key. You're doing right by starting now." Her words lit a fire, validation I'd never gotten from family. I nodded, blinking back tears, my fist clenching in my pocket around that napkin note. Months in, the struggle intensified. Bills piled up, therapy co-pays ate into savings. I picked up extra shifts, my feet throbbing as I smiled through orders. Jessie's nightmares woke us both. Him screaming about smelly hurt, me soothing with songs, my voice cracking. But progress came. He drew pictures in therapy, dark scribbles turning brighter. My courses? I aced quizzes on trauma-informed care, my essays pouring out personal insights without naming names. The secret grew. A certification program in child advocacy, online and affordable. I studied in stolen moments, lunch breaks, bath time supervision with headphones in. Doubts hammered, what if they found out, mocked this as Tara's hobby? My jaw set, teeth grinding, no, this was mine. By year 1, the hidden success bloomed. Jessie laughed more, trusted strangers without flinching. My knowledge? I volunteered at a local shelter, advising moms on trauma signs, their grateful hugs fueling me. I started a private journal tracking our wins, Jessie's first unprompted, "I love you, Mama," my first A in advanced psych. It was massive, this foundation, stronger than their flimsy bonds. But I kept it quiet, no social media boasts, no family updates. Let them think I'd crumbled. My fingers traced the certification email on my screen. "Congratulations, Tara Holloway, Certified Child Trauma Specialist." Tears fell, hot and relieving. The aha had evolved. This wasn't just survival, it was thriving in shadows. Jessie slept soundly now, and as I tucked his blanket, my touch lingered. We'd built this, and it was just the beginning. That certification email still glowed on my screen some nights, a beacon in the dim light of my desk lamp as I traced the words with my finger like they might vanish if I blinked. It had been the foundation, but the real building came in the months that followed, layer upon layer, until now. 2 years after that fateful night, our life felt solid, unbreakable. Jesse at 6 bounded into the kitchen each morning with stories from school, his eyes bright and unshadowed, the therapy sessions fading into occasional check-ins where Dr. Ramirez nodded approvingly at his drawings of happy families. Just him and me. My education had snowballed, from that initial cert to an associate's degree in child psychology, earned through endless nights of highlighting textbooks and typing papers while Jesse slept. I'd even started a small consulting gig, advising local daycares on trauma-informed practices, the checks modest but steady, enough to move us into a cozy 2-bedroom with a yard where Jesse could run without fear. But the biggest secret? The quiet revenge I'd orchestrated, drip by drip, exposing Lauren's cruelty without ever raising my voice. Letters to grandmother, anonymous at first, then signed, detailing the Perfume incident, backed by Jesse's therapy notes I'd carefully redacted. She'd listened, investigated, her sharp mind piecing it together. Now, on the eve of her will reading, disguised as our annual family dinner, everything teetered on the brink. I stood in front of my closet mirror, smoothing the simple black dress I'd chosen, my hands lingering on the fabric as if it could armor me against what was coming. The invitation had arrived weeks ago, a crisp envelope from Mom, her handwriting looping elegantly. Family dinner at grandmother's, mandatory. No mention of the will, but I knew from her discreet calls to me. Yes, grandmother had reached out privately, her voice frail but firm over the phone. "Tara, I've seen the truth," she'd said last month, her words a balm after years of distance. She'd always been the outlier in the family, sharp-eyed and fair, but age had kept her removed until my letters pulled her in. Tonight, at her estate, the dinner would precede the reading, a tradition she insisted on. My stomach knotted as I zipped the dress, the metal teeth rasping like a warning. Reluctantly? That didn't cover it. I dreaded walking back into their world, smelling the same roasted meats, hearing the same laughter that had masked cruelty. But I had to go, to witness the fallout, to close the loop I'd started. My fingers trembled as I applied mascara, the wand shaking slightly, leaving a tiny smudge I dabbed away with a tissue. Jesse was at a sleepover with his best friend from school, safe and oblivious, his backpack packed with snacks I'd slipped in earlier. "Have fun, buddy," I'd said, kneeling to hug him, his arms tight around my neck. Leaving him felt like tearing off a Band-Aid, but this night was mine to face alone. I paced the living room, my heels clicking on the hardwood I'd refinished myself last summer, a project that had left blisters on my palms but pride in my chest. The clock ticked toward 7, each second amplifying the buzz in my veins. What if grandmother changed her mind? What if my exposures, those carefully worded emails, the scanned therapy summaries I'd sent, weren't enough? I'd been methodical, starting with vague hints about family discord, then specifics on Lauren's pranks, including witness accounts from cousins I'd quietly contacted. One by one, they'd confirmed, their guilt loosening tongues. Grandmother's responses grew warmer, inviting me for tea where she'd patted my hand, her rings cool against my skin. "You've suffered enough, child." Now her will, rumored to divide her considerable estate, hung like a sword. My family assumed they'd inherit equally, their greed barely veiled in holiday calls I'd dodged, but I knew better. My breath caught as I checked my phone. No messages, good. I didn't want their feigned concern now. Sitting on the couch, I folded and unfolded the invitation, the paper creasing under my thumbs. Memories of past dinners flooded back, but I pushed them down, focusing on the present. This wasn't about gloating, it was closure. My education had taught me that revenge wasn't fire but water, eroding rock over time. I'd poured myself into studies, interning at a trauma center where I'd counseled kids like Jesse, their stories mirroring his until healing bloomed. Last week, my supervisor had pulled me aside, her clipboard tucked underarm. "Tara, you're ready for full-time. The grant came through. We're expanding. A life-changing offer, salary, benefits, a chance to lecture on child advocacy." I'd nodded, my smile genuine, but inside it intertwined with tonight. Success on my terms, not theirs. My nails tapped the coffee table, a restless rhythm, as I glanced at the framed photo of Jesse and me at the park, his grin wide. For him, I'd endure this. The drive to grandmother's estate wound through familiar suburbs, the radio humming low to drown my thoughts. Streetlights cast shadows on the dashboard, my grip on the wheel tightening with each mile. Parking in the gravel lot, I spotted their cars. Mom's sedan, Dad's truck, Lauren's flashy SUV, Mike's practical hatchback. My heart thudded as I cut the engine, the silence pressing in. I sat there, forehead against the wheel, breathing deep like the techniques I'd learned. Inhale 4, hold, exhale. My hand reached for the door handle, pausing. Reluctance warred with resolve. Part of me wanted to drive away, let the wheel drop without my face there. But no. I'd earned this front row seat. Stepping out, the cool evening air nipped my skin, gravel crunching underfoot as I approached the grand door. Grandmother's maid opened it, her nod sympathetic. "Miss Tara, she's waiting." I stepped inside, the foyer smelling of polished wood and faint lavender. Grandmother's scent, not perfume. Voices drifted from the dining room, laughter that grated like nails on chalkboard. They hadn't noticed me yet. I lingered in the hall, adjusting my purse strap, the leather slipping slightly in my damp palm. Mom's voice carried, "Tara's probably late again, always dramatic." Lauren's chuckle followed, sharp, my jaw clenched, teeth pressing together. But I straightened, smoothing my dress once more and walked in. Heads turned, smiles freezing. Dad's fork paused midair, Mom's wineglass hovered. Lauren's eyes narrowed, Mike shifted uncomfortably. Grandmother, at the head, beamed weakly. "Tara, dear, sit." I did, my chair scraping as I pulled it out, the sound echoing. Plates were passed, but tension thickened the air. Small talk sputtered. Weather, traffic. My responses clipped, hands folded in my lap to hide the fidgeting fingers. Lauren leaned forward, her necklace dangling. "So, Tara, still playing therapist?" Her tone mocked, but I met her gaze steadily, my pulse steadying. Inside, the verge of it all hummed. The deal wasn't business, but justice, about to seal. Dinner dragged, each bite mechanical, my fork tines scraping the plate. Grandmother watched, her eyes knowing. As dessert arrived, pie, steam rising, I felt the shift. She cleared her throat, napkin dabbing her lips. After this, the reading. Gasps, but mine was silent. The moment hovered, life-changing, as I set my fork down, the clink final. The pie slice slid onto my plate with a soft thud, steam curling up like whispers of the tension in the room. I picked up my fork, the cool metal grounding me as I poked at the flaky crust, not really hungry but needing something to do with my hands. Grandmother's announcement hung in the air, thickening it further, but no one dove in yet. Typical, they'd circle like sharks first. Mom cleared her throat across the table, her napkin folded precisely in her lap, and fixed me with that look, the one that said I was an intruder in my own family. "Tara, it's been ages. What have you been up to? Still waitressing, I assume?" Her voice was syrupy sweet, but her eyes flicked to Lauren, who smirked behind her coffee cup, the porcelain clinking as she set it down a bit too hard. I swallowed a bite of pie, the apples tart on my tongue, and met her gaze steadily. "Actually, I've moved on from that. Studying child psychology now, got certified last year." My words were calm, but inside my pulse quickened, waiting for the hit. Dad grunted from his end, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand before grabbing his napkin. "Psychology? That's interesting. But does it pay the bills? Mike here just bought a new house, 3 bedrooms, backyard." He nodded at my brother, who puffed up a little, adjusting his tie with a quick tug. Mike leaned forward, his chair creaking. "Yeah, real estate's booming. You should think about something stable, Tara. For Jesse's sake." The way he said Jesse's name like a pity point made my fingers tighten around the fork, the tines pressing into my palm. Lauren chimed in next, her laugh light but edged, like broken glass. She twirled a lock of hair around her finger, her rings catching the chandelier light. "Oh, come on, Tara, child psychology? After that little incident with the perfume? You're not still harping on that, are you?" She rolled her eyes, glancing around for support, and Mom nodded subtly, her lips pursing. "It was just a joke, dear. Kids are resilient." Resilient. The word stung, echoing the therapy sessions where I'd learned it wasn't that simple. I set my fork down gently, the clink barely audible, and folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. It wasn't a joke to Jesse, or to me. My voice stayed even, but Lauren waved it off, her hand flapping dismissively. "God, you're so sensitive. Always have been. Remember when you cried over that broken doll? Pathetic." Mike snickered, covering it with a cough, his fist to his mouth. The barrage kept coming, each question laced with condescension, like they were peeling me apart layer by layer. Mom tilted her head, her earrings swaying. "And where's Jesse tonight? You didn't bring him? Afraid he'd cause a scene again?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, her fingers drumming lightly on the tablecloth. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I breathed through it, my chest rising and falling deliberately. He's at a friend's, having fun. Dad leaned back, crossing his arms, the fabric of his shirt rustling. Friends, huh? Good for him. But you know, Tara, family should come first. You've been distant, barely call anymore. Distant. As if they hadn't pushed me away. I nodded politely, my nails digging into my palms under the table. I've been busy building a life. Lauren wasn't done. She leaned in closer, her perfume, ironically, a new scent wafting over, making my nose twitch. Building a life? With what, online classes? Please make— I just got promoted at the boutique, managing now. Real responsibility. She emphasized real, her eyebrow arching. Mike jumped in, eager. Yeah, and I'm coaching Little League on weekends. Kids love it. You should enroll Jesse. Teach him some toughness. Toughness, like enduring their barbs was a virtue. I shifted in my seat, the wood creaking under me, and forced a small smile. He's in therapy actually, doing great. The word therapy dropped like a stone, and the room quieted for a beat. Mom's eyes widened slightly, her hand pausing mid-reach for her water glass. Therapy? For what? That perfume thing was ages ago. You're making him soft, Tara. Soft. The accusation landed heavy, but I didn't flinch outwardly, though my toes curled in my shoes. Grandmother watched silently, her frail hands clasped on the table, but she didn't intervene. Not yet. Dad shook his head, sighing deeply. See, this is why we worry. You're turning him into a victim. Life's hard. Better learn early. His words echoed their lifelong mantra, the one that justified ignoring pain. Lauren laughed again, sharper this time, her chair scraping as she adjusted. Victim? Like you, Tara? Always playing the martyr. Poor me, single mom. Get over it. Her words sliced, and I felt the old urge to shrink, to apologize, but I held my ground, my back straightening against the chair. The questions morphed into backhanded compliments, each one a twist of the knife. Mom recovered, sipping her water with a dainty lift of the glass. Well, at least you're trying, Tara. That's more than we expected after everything. Everything meaning my pregnancy, my failures. Mike nodded, his fork gesturing. Yeah, props for sticking with it. Not everyone does. Props. Like I was a kid getting a participation trophy. Lauren topped it off, her smile saccharine. And hey, if psychology doesn't work out, you can always come back to waitressing. You're good at taking orders. The table chuckled lightly, except grandmother, whose lips thinned. I endured it, my responses short. Thanks, maybe, we'll see. While inside, anger simmered, my heart pounding in my ears. As the pie plates emptied, the contempt felt endless, a gauntlet I walked step by step. Dad pushed his plate away, the scrape loud. Seriously, Tara, when are you going to settle down? Find a man, get stable. Settle down, like my life was a mess, they pitied. I glanced at grandmother, her eyes meeting mine with a subtle nod, and drew strength from it. My fingers relaxed in my lap, the tension easing just a fraction. They thought they were superior, but their words bounced off the armor I'd built. The education, the healing, the quiet exposures. Still, each jab landed, bruising old wounds. Lauren's final dig came as the maid cleared plates, her voice casual. Just don't drag us down with your drama, okay? Drama. My jaw tightened, teeth clenching briefly. I nodded, silent as the room shifted toward the reading, the air electric with their unspoken greed. The clatter of plates being cleared faded into an uneasy hush, the maid's footsteps retreating down the hall like a retreating storm. I sat there, my back rigid against the chair, the taste of pie lingering sour on my tongue as their words echoed in my head. Sensitive, pathetic, soft. Grandmother dabbed her mouth with her napkin one last time, folding it neatly beside her plate, her movements deliberate and slow. The chandelier above cast flickering shadows on the tablecloth, making everyone's faces look sharper, more angular. Mom shifted in her seat, her chair scraping faintly, and cleared her throat again, that telltale sign she was about to steer the conversation somewhere pointed. Well, since we're all here, she began, her voice pitching up like she was announcing a toast, and grandmother's about to share her news, maybe it's time we address the elephant in the room. Her eyes locked on me, hard and unyielding, her fingers interlacing on the table as if bracing for impact. Dad nodded gruffly, his arms crossing over his chest with a rustle of fabric, his gaze flicking to Lauren and Mike for support before settling on me. Yeah, Tara, we've been talking as a family, and it's clear things can't go on like this. Lauren leaned forward, her elbows planting on the table, a smug tilt to her lips as she toyed with her dessert fork, spinning it slowly between her fingers. Mike avoided my eyes at first, staring at his empty plate, but then he looked up, his jaw set. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, like the walls were closing in. I kept my hands in my lap, my thumbs pressing into my thighs to steady myself, feeling the fabric bunch under the pressure. What was coming? I knew from grandmother's hints that the will would shift everything, but this, whatever this was, felt like their preemptive strike. Mom continued, her tone measured but laced with that familiar disappointment. You've pulled away, Tara? Barely visit, don't call. And when you do show up, it's with accusations about that silly perfume thing years ago. We've tried to be patient, but you're poisoning the well. Poisoning. The word hung heavy and I felt a flush creep up my neck, but I didn't interrupt, my lips pressing into a thin line. Dad jumped in, his voice gruffer. Exactly. Family sticks together, but you've made it us versus you. Therapy for Jesse? Dragging up old nonsense? It's divisive. He uncrossed his arms, one hand slapping the table lightly for emphasis, the sound sharp. Lauren's eyes gleamed as she added, and let's be honest, Tara, you're jealous, always have been, of my job, Mike's success, our lives. Instead of celebrating, you tear us down. Her fork clinked against the plate as she set it down, crossing her arms mimicked Dad's pose. The escalation built like a wave, each of them piling on, their voices overlapping in a chorus of grievances. Mike finally spoke up, his tone almost reluctant but firm. Look, sis, we love you, sort of, but this drama, it's exhausting. You act like we're the villains, but you're the one who left that night, stirring trouble. Stirring trouble. As if protecting Jesse was optional. My heart pounded now, a steady thrum in my ears, but I held their gazes, my breathing controlled from all those therapy techniques I'd learned. I've built a life, I said quietly, my voice cutting through the din. One where Jesse's safe. That's not drama, that's necessity. But they weren't listening. Mom waved her hand dismissively, her rings flashing. See, always twisting it. We're done enabling this, Tara. We've decided as a family to cut ties, officially. Cut ties. The words landed like a slap, and for a split second, the room spun. Officially? What did that even mean? Dad nodded solemnly. No more invites to dinners, no help if you need it. You're on your own. Have been, really. But now it's clear. Lauren's smile widened, predatory as she leaned back, her chair creaking. Yeah, no more handouts or pity calls. Go play therapist somewhere else. Mike shifted uncomfortably, his fingers drumming the table edge. It's for the best. Clean break. Grandmother remained silent, her expression unreadable, but I caught the slight tightening of her jaw, her hands clenching the napkin in her lap. The announcement hung there, formal and cold like a decree from a throne. Mom elaborated, her voice rising with conviction. We've talked to a lawyer, nothing legal against you, but we're removing you from family accounts, group chats, everything, and Jesse too until you get your head straight. Jesse. Mentioning him twisted the knife deeper, and I felt my nails dig into my thighs, the sting grounding me. You can't just disown us, I said, my tone steady despite the storm inside. But Lauren laughed, a bark of sound. We can and we are. Grandmother's will is coming, probably splitting evenly among us real family members. You, out. Real family. The cruelty of it burned, but I didn't flinch, my eyes flicking to grandmother, who finally stirred, her voice frail but cutting. Not so fast. But they ignored her for the moment, the escalation peaking as Dad stood, his chair pushing back with a loud scrape. It's done, Tara. Leave now if you want, save us the awkwardness. Mom nodded, her eyes glistening with fake tears, dabbing at them with her napkin. We tried, honey, but you're toxic. Toxic. From the people who'd laughed at a child's pain. Lauren high-fived Mike subtly under the table, their hands brushing with a soft slap. The room pulsed with their triumph, but inside me something shifted, not breaking but stealing. This was their verdict, but I knew the truth. I'd already freed myself. Still, the words stung, raw and final as I sat there, the weight of their stares pressing down. Grandmother cleared her throat again, louder, her cane tapping the floor once. Sit down, all of you. Dad hesitated, then sank back, his face reddening. The tension coiled tighter, but their announcement echoed, the formal cut-off a wall between us. I breathed through it, my chest tight, fingers unclenching slowly. This was the peak of their cruelty, but it wasn't the end, not yet. Grandmother's cane tapped the floor again, a sharp, insistent rhythm that cut through the lingering echoes of their verdict like a judge's gavel. The room fell into a strained silence, broken only by the soft sniffle from Mom as she lowered her napkin, her eyes still glistening but now wary, darting between Grandmother and me. Dad sank deeper into his chair, his arms recrossing with a frustrated huff, the fabric of his sleeves whispering against each other. Lauren's smug smile faltered just a fraction, her fingers pausing in their absent twirl of her hair, while Mike stopped his foot tapping, his shoe sole finally still against the floor. I sat there, the weight of their disownment still pressing on my chest like an invisible hand, but I didn't move, my hands now resting flat on my thighs, palms down, feeling the coolness of the dress fabric seep into my skin. Humiliation burned hot in my veins, at being cast out so casually, so formally, in front of everyone, but deeper still was a quiet anticipation. Grandmother had promised this moment in our secret talks, her voice over the phone weeks ago steady despite her age. "They'll see, Tara, the truth always surfaces." She reached under the table with a slow, deliberate motion, her hand emerging with a thick manila envelope, the paper crinkling as she placed it on the tablecloth. The seal was broken, but the contents gleamed pristine, legal documents stacked neatly. "My lawyer prepared this," she said, her voice frail but carrying an undercurrent of steel, each word enunciated carefully. Her fingers, spotted with age, tapped the envelope once. "But before I read, I want you all to know, I didn't make these decisions lightly. Tara's letters, they opened my eyes." Letters, the word dropped like a pebble in still water, ripples spreading across their faces. Mom's eyes widened, her hand flying to her chest, fingers splaying over her blouse. "Letters? What letters?" Dad leaned forward, his elbows thudding onto the table. "Mother, what are you talking about?" Lauren's face paled, her earlier confidence evaporating as she glanced at me, her eyes narrowing in accusation. Mike just stared, his mouth slightly open, frozen mid-breath. Grandmother ignored them, unfolding the top sheet with careful precision, the paper rustling like dry leaves. She adjusted her glasses, the thin frames perched on her nose, and began reading in a measured tone. "I, Eleanor Holloway, being of sound mind, hereby amend my last will and testament as follows." The formal language hung in the air, and I watched their reactions unfold in slow motion. Mom's hand trembling as she reached for her water glass, the liquid sloshing slightly, Dad's jaw clenching, a muscle ticking in his cheek. Lauren shifting in her seat, her knee bouncing now under the table, the vibration faint but noticeable. This was it. The precise moment where everything flipped. My deepest humiliation, their triumphant disownment, shattered by the truth I'd quietly seeded over 2 years. Those discreet exposures, anonymous tips at first, then signed accounts, therapy summaries shared with permission, even recorded voicemails from cousins confirming Lauren's pranks weren't isolated. I'd sent them to Grandmother piecemeal, never demanding, just informing. And she'd investigated, hiring a private firm to verify, her calls to me growing more frequent, more affirming. She continued, her voice gaining strength. "To my son, Robert Holloway, and his wife, Patricia, I leave the sum of $10,000 each for basic needs. No more, due to evidence of enabling abusive behavior within the family." Dad's face drained of color, his arms uncrossing as he gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening. "What? Mother, this is insane!" Mom gasped, her glass clinking hard against the table as she set it down, water spilling over the rim in a small puddle. Grandmother didn't pause, her eyes scanning the page. "To my grandson, Michael Holloway, the family cabin in the woods, but only the deed. No maintenance funds, as your silence in the face of cruelty speaks volumes." Mike's mouth snapped shut, then opened again, his hands balling into fists on the table. "Grandma, wait, this can't be right. I've always been there for you." Lauren's turn came next, and I felt a twisted knot in my stomach tighten, not satisfaction exactly, but a release. Like exhaling after holding my breath too long. Grandmother's voice dipped lower. "To my granddaughter Lauren Holloway, nothing. Your malicious actions, including the deliberate harm to young Jesse with perfume sprayed in his eyes, confirmed by multiple witnesses and medical records, disqualify you from any inheritance. Furthermore, I've reported the incident to relevant authorities for review." Lauren shot up from her chair, the legs screeching back across the floor, her face twisting in fury. "This is bullshit, Tara, you did this, you bitch!" Her finger jabbed toward me, trembling, but I didn't react, my expression calm, though my pulse raced. Grandmother raised a hand, her palm up. "Sit down, Lauren, or leave, but hear the rest." The room erupted in chaos then, Dad pounding the table once, his voice booming. "Mother, you've been manipulated. Tara's lies." Mom sobbing openly now, her napkin pressed to her face, shoulders shaking. Mike muttering under his breath, his chair pushed back as if ready to stand. But grandmother tapped her cane louder, 3 sharp raps that silenced them, her authority unbroken. "The investigation was thorough, private detectives, interviews, even your own cousins corroborated. The cruelty wasn't one incident, it was a pattern. Ignoring Tara's achievements, favoring the conventional, laughing at a child's pain, I won't reward that." Her words landed heavy, and I felt the scale of my discreet work reveal itself fully, not just revenge, but justice. Those 2 years, compiling evidence in quiet nights, scanning Jesse's therapy notes with his privacy protected, emailing grandmother with facts, not emotion. It had led here, to this unraveling. She turned to me last, her eyes softening, the paper crinkling as she set it down. "To my granddaughter, Tara Holloway, and her son, Jesse, the bulk of my estate, the house, the investments, the trust fund valued at over $2 million, for your resilience, your pursuit of healing and education in child trauma, and for building a life of true value despite adversity." The number hung in the air, staggering, but it wasn't the money that hit me. It was the validation, public and irrevocable. Mom wailed, "No, she's turned you against us." Dad stood now, his face purple, pointing at me. "You scheming little, after we raised you." Lauren lunged forward, but Mike grabbed her arm, his grip tight, pulling her back with a hissed, "Stop!" The humiliation reversed in an instant, their scorn boomeranging back as shock and rage. I sat still, my hands now clasped loosely, feeling the tension drain from my body. This was the external event, the will's reading, that changed everything, revealing not just my success and exposure, but the depth of their downfall. Social ruin would follow, whispers in their circles, financial strain as they lost the expected windfall. But in that moment, as grandmother folded the papers with finality, her nod to me subtle and proud, I realized the true scale. I'd orchestrated this quietly, methodically, without becoming like them. The room spun with their protests, but I breathed easy, the air clearer. The chaos erupted like a dam bursting, their voices crashing over each other in a frantic scramble that filled the dining room with a cacophony of denial and desperation. Dad's face was beet red, his fists clenched on the table as he shoved his chair back further, the legs scraping harshly against the floor in a long, grating screech. "This can't be happening. Mother, you've lost your mind. Tara's poisoned you with lies." He pointed a thick finger at me again, his hand shaking, veins bulging on his forehead like they might pop. Mom dissolved into louder sobs, her napkin now a sodden ball in her fist, which she pressed against her mouth to muffle the wails, her shoulders heaving with each breath. "How could you do this to us, Eleanor, after everything we've done for you?" Lauren paced behind her chair, her heels clicking rapidly on the wood, hands raking through her hair, pulling strands loose from her perfect updo. "Nothing? Nothing? I deserve that money. I've been the one visiting you, pretending to care." Mike slumped in his seat, his face ashen, hands covering his eyes as if he could block out the reality, muttering, "The cabin? But no funds. What am I supposed to do with that?" I remained seated, my posture straight, hands now resting lightly on the table edge, fingers tracing the embroidered pattern on the cloth to keep myself anchored. The humiliation they'd heaped on me minutes ago, their smug verdict of disownment, now boomeranged back at them, and watching it unfold felt surreal, like observing a play I'd scripted but never rehearsed. But this wasn't about gloating. It was about truth, the kind I'd buried for years under their gaslighting. Grandmother raised her hand again, palm out, her rings catching the light as she silenced them with a single sharp quiet. Her voice, though weak, carried the weight of finality, and they froze mid-outburst. Dad's mouth open, Mom's sob catching in her throat, Lauren mid-step, Mike's hands dropping to the table with a soft thud. She looked at me then, her eyes clear and steady despite the frailty in her frame. "Tara, do you have anything to add before we conclude?" It was my cue. The moment to expose their hypocrisy, not with rage, but with the calm I'd honed through therapy and study. The kind that comes from knowing your worth isn't up for debate. I nodded slowly, pushing my chair back just enough to stand, the movement deliberate, the wood whispering against the floor. Their eyes snapped to me, a mix of fury and sudden pleading, like cornered animals sensing the trap. I smoothed my dress with one hand, the fabric cool under my palm, and met each gaze in turn. Dad's bulging eyes, Mom's tear-streaked cheeks, Lauren's snarled lip, Mike's desperate stare. "You've spent years dismissing me," I began, my voice even, low, forcing them to lean in to hear. "Ignoring my achievements, celebrating only what fit your narrow view. Lauren's jobs that last 6 months slave Mike's promotions that anyone could get. But when I got pregnant, worked 2 jobs to support Jesse, enrolled in classes to better myself? Crickets. Or worse, mockery." Lauren huffed, crossing her arms tightly, her elbows digging into her sides. "That's not..." But I continued, unfazed, my words flowing like a rehearsed lecture from my child trauma courses. "And the perfume? You called it a joke, but it was assault. Jesse's eyes burned for days, he had nightmares for months. I put him in therapy not to make him soft but to heal the damage you caused. Damage you laughed at." Mom shook her head vigorously, her earrings jingling. "We didn't mean..." I held up a hand, mirroring grandmother's gesture, and she stopped, her mouth closing with a click. Dad interjected, his voice booming but cracking at the edges. "We were just having fun, you overreacted, like always." I turned to him, my eyes locking on his, seeing the flicker of doubt he'd never admit. "Fun? At a child's expense? That's not family, that's bullying. And now, when the consequences hit, when grandmother sees through your facade, you scramble, begging, accusing me of manipulation. But who manipulated whom? You disowned me 5 minutes ago, called me toxic. Now that the money's gone, suddenly I'm the villain for telling the truth?" Lauren stepped closer, her face inches from mine, breath hot and ragged. "You sent those letters. You schemed behind our backs." I didn't back away, my stance firm, feet planted shoulder width. "Schemed? I shared facts, therapy records, witness statements, things you denied. If that's scheming, what do you call spraying perfume in a kid's eyes, or laughing while he cried?" Mike finally spoke, his voice pleading, hands outstretched like he was reaching for a lifeline. "Tara, come on, we can fix this. Talk to Grandma, tell her it was a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. The word ignited something in me, but I kept my tone measured, drawing on every lesson in emotional regulation I'd learned. "Fix it? Like how you fixed, ignoring my graduation, my promotions, my entire life as a mom? You only want to fix it now because it costs you. That's hypocrisy. Pretending to care when it's convenient." Mom wailed again, collapsing back into her chair, the frame creaking under her sudden weight. "You're breaking our hearts." I looked at her, really looked, seeing the performance for what it was. "Hearts? Where were yours when Jessie screamed or when I begged for support as a single mom? You broke mine long ago, but I rebuilt, with therapy, education, a stable home, without you." The scramble intensified then, their pleas turning frantic. Dad lumbered toward grandmother, kneeling awkwardly beside her chair, his knees popping as he lowered himself. "Mother, please, reconsider. We're your blood." Lauren joined in, her voice shrill. "Yeah, I didn't mean it, it was an accident." "Accident. Now it was an accident." Mike nodded vigorously, his head bobbing. "We'll change, promise, include Tara more." But grandmother shook her head, her cane tapping once. "Too late. The will is signed, notarized. Tara's evidence was irrefutable." Their faces crumpled further, Dad's shoulders slumping, Mom's sobs turning hiccuped, Lauren's pacing halting as she gripped the back of a chair, knuckles white. I felt no joy, just a profound calm, like closing a book on a painful chapter. "I don't need your inclusion now," I said, my voice steady as I gathered my purse from the chair arm, the strap sliding over my shoulder with a soft whoosh. "I've found peace without it. Jesse's thriving, he draws happy pictures, makes friends, trusts again. I'm consulting on child trauma, helping others avoid what we endured. That's my legacy, not your money or approval." Lauren snarled, "You'll regret this." But I shook my head, stepping back. "No, you'll regret not changing sooner." With that I turned, my heels clicking a measured rhythm toward the door. Dad called after me, "Tara, wait." Mom echoed, "Don't go." But I didn't stop. Pushing the heavy door open, the cool night air rushing in like freedom, the gravel crunched underfoot as I walked to my car, their voices fading behind me. Unlocking the door, the beep sharp in the quiet, I slid in, starting the engine with a low hum. As I pulled away, the estate shrinking in the rear view, a weight lifted. Not revenge's thrill, but the satisfaction of truth spoken, hypocrisy laid bare. I'd exited not in defeat, but in power. The headlights cut through the dark winding roads as I drove away from grandmother's estate, the engine's hum a steady companion to the whirlwind in my mind. The night's events replayed in fragments, their shocked faces, the crumbling facades, grandmother's firm voice reading the will like a long overdue reckoning. But as the miles stretched, a different kind of clarity settled in, not the sharp edge of victory, but a soft, warming glow. I wasn't heading back to an empty apartment. Jesse was at his sleepover, but tomorrow morning I'd pick him up, and we'd head straight to our weekly brunch with the group I'd come to call my chosen family. The contrast hit me then, sitting at a red light, the dashboard glow illuminating my hands on the wheel, hands that no longer trembled. Where my biological family had built walls of judgment and cruelty, these people, friends from therapy groups, colleagues from my trauma advocacy work, even Dr. Ramirez, who'd become more mentor than therapist, had offered open doors, genuine support that didn't come with strings or sneers. Tonight's toxicity made tomorrow's warmth feel even more precious, a balm I'd earned through the hard work of rebuilding. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the adrenaline had ebbed, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I unlocked the door quietly, the key turning with a familiar click, and stepped inside, kicking off my heels with a soft thud against the entryway mat. The apartment smelled of the lavender candle I'd lit earlier, a scent I'd chosen deliberately. Calming, nothing like the sharp perfumes that haunted my memories. I sank onto the couch, my dress wrinkling as I curled my legs under me and pulled out my phone. No missed calls from them. Good, the silence was a gift now. Instead, a text from Sarah, one of my closest allies from the support group. "Brunch tomorrow? Can't wait to hear about your week." I smiled, my thumb hovering over the screen before typing back, "Absolutely. Got stories." Sarah was a single mom too, her daughter a year older than Jessie. We'd met in a parenting class I'd taken during my certification push. She didn't know the full details of tonight. None of them did, not yet. But she'd been there for the smaller wins. The late-night vents about family shadows. Sleep came fitfully, dreams mixing the dinner's chaos with flashes of Jessie's laughter. But morning brought renewal. The sun filtered through the blinds as I brewed coffee, the machine gurgling contentedly, steam rising in lazy curls. I dressed casually, jeans, a soft sweater, my hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, and drove to pick up Jesse. His friend's mom answered the door with a wave, Jesse bounding out with his backpack slung over one shoulder, his face lit with excitement. "Mama! We played games all night." He hugged my legs, his small arms squeezing tight, and I knelt, ruffling his hair, inhaling the kid shampoo scent that grounded me every time. "Sounds fun, buddy. Ready for brunch with Sarah and the crew?" He nodded vigorously, his eyes sparkling, no trace of the old fears thanks to the healing we'd fought for. As we buckled into the car, his chatter filling the space, I felt the contrast sharpen. Last night's dinner had been a battlefield of egos, but this was nourishment, real and unforced. The cafe was our usual spot, a cozy corner place with outdoor seating under string lights, even in the morning sun. Sarah waved from a table as we approached, her daughter Mia already coloring on a placemat. "Tara? Jessie?" She stood for hugs, her embrace warm and quick, no lingering judgments. Dr. Ramirez, Elena as she insisted outside sessions, arrived next, her satchel slung over her shoulder, smiling as she ruffled Jessie's hair. "Look at you, growing like a weed." Then came Mark, a colleague from the trauma center where I consulted, his laugh booming as he high-fived Jessie. "Little man, you ready for pancakes?" We'd all connected through shared paths, Sarah from group, Elena from therapy, Mark from work, but over months it had become this, a chosen circle, bound by empathy, not blood. We settled in, orders placed, pancakes for the kids, eggs and avocado toast for the adults, coffee steaming in mugs. The conversation flowed easy at first, light and laughter. Jessie and Mia compared drawings, their crayons scratching paper in enthusiastic strokes. Sarah leaned in, her fork pausing mid-bite. "So Spill, how was the family thing last night? You looked tense in your text." I hesitated, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking against the ceramic. This was the moment, the genuine sharing that contrasted so starkly with the dinner's venom. No backhanded compliments here, no dismissals. I set the spoon down, my fingers wrapping around the mug for warmth. It was intense. They disowned me officially, right before grandmother read her will. Gasps rippled around the table, Elena's eyes widening behind her glasses, Mark's brow furrowing. Sarah reached across, her hand covering mine, a simple squeeze without pulling away. Disowned? Tara, that's awful. What happened? I recounted it in pieces, the gauntlet of contempt, the verdict, the will's reveal, my voice steady but raw, emotions surfacing in the pauses. Jesse glanced up occasionally, but Mia distracted him with a game, their giggles a soft underscore. Elena nodded thoughtfully, her notepad untouched. This wasn't a session, just support. That sounds like classic projection. They couldn't face their own failures, so they blamed you. Mark chimed in, his voice gentle. But the will, wow, validation from the one person who saw clearly. How do you feel? Feel, they asked, really asked, without steering or minimizing. I exhaled, my shoulders dropping. Relieved, mostly. Hurt, but not broken. It confirmed what I already knew. I don't need them. The contrast hit deeper as we talked. Where my family had mocked my education, Sarah beamed. Your trauma work? That's huge, you've helped so many, including me, Elena added, and Jesse's progress? It's because of your commitment. No jealousy, just pride. Mark shared his own story, a estranged sibling, his hands gesturing animatedly. Choosing boundaries saved me. You're inspiring. We laughed too, Jesse spilling syrup, Mia's dramatic retelling of a school play, the warmth wrapping around us like a blanket. No one interrupted to one-up, listening was active, eyes meeting, nods encouraging. As plates cleared, Sarah hugged me again. We're your family now, got it? I nodded, tears pricking but happy ones, my arm around Jesse as he leaned into me. Leaving the cafe, Jesse skipping ahead with Mia, I felt the toxic dinner's residue dissolve fully. Their cruelty had been cold isolation. This was connection, chosen and true. The sun warmed my face as we walked, a promise of more moments like this, genuine, supportive, the kind that healed. The drive home from the cafe was a peaceful blur, Jesse humming in the back seat with his new drawing clutched in his hands, the crayon marks still fresh and vibrant. The sun dipped lower, casting golden hues through the windows, and for the first time in what felt like forever, my mind wasn't replaying the dinner's venom or the will's fallout. Instead, it lingered on the brunch, the easy laughter, Sarah's hand on mine, Elena's insightful nod. But as we pulled into the apartment complex, my phone buzzed in the cup holder, an insistent vibration that shattered the calm. I glanced at the screen. Mom, again. The third call since last night, each one ignored. But this time, something in me shifted. The aftermath wasn't over, they wouldn't let it be. I parked, the engine ticking as it cooled, and stared at the ringing device, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Jesse unbuckled himself, hopping out with a, "Race you inside, Mama!" His footsteps pattered away, giving me a moment alone. This call, it represented the scramble I'd anticipated but hoped to avoid. Their desperation, now that the financial rug was pulled, would test the boundaries I'd built. I declined the call, my finger pressing firmly, and pocketed the phone. No, not yet. Boundaries weren't just words, they were actions, enforced step by step. Inside, Jesse busied himself with toys in the living room, his blocks clacking together in a rhythmic build and crash. I sat at the kitchen table, pulling out my journal, the leather-bound one I'd started during my first psych class, pages filled with reflections on resilience. My pen hovered over a blank page, the tip scratching lightly as I wrote, Aftermath Day 1. They reach, I hold. It was my mantra now, born from the education that had armored me. In trauma recovery, boundaries were lifelines, clear, consistent, non-negotiable. I'd learned that the hard way, studying case after case where enmeshed families perpetuated cycles of hurt. My family, textbook enmeshment, their love conditional on compliance. The will had exposed it, but their reaction would try to reel me back. As if on cue, a text pinged, from Dad. Tara, we need to talk, this is a mistake, call us. My fingers tightened around the pen, the plastic creaking. Mistake, as if grandmother's decision was mine to undo. I didn't reply, setting the phone face down with a soft clunk, the screen's glow muted. The attempts escalated that evening, a barrage that tested my resolve like waves against a seawall. Lauren's voicemail came first, her voice sugary sweet through the speaker as I listened on low volume, Jesse occupied with a cartoon. Hey sis, Look, last night was heated. I didn't mean that stuff about the perfume. Let's grab coffee, hash it out. I miss Jessie. Miss Jessie. The manipulation twisted in my gut, but I deleted it, my thumb swiping decisively. Then Mike's email popped up, subject, family first. I opened it, scanning the lines. Tara, Grandma's confused. We can contest the will, together. You're part of us, always. Together. Now they wanted unity, after disowning me hours before. I archived it without responding, my mouse clicking with finality. Mom's next text was a photo of us as kids, Lauren and me smiling in matching dresses. Remember when? We can be that again. Nostalgia as a hook. I felt the pull, the old guilt flickering, but I breathed through it, chest expanding slowly. No, boundaries meant recognizing patterns, not falling for them. Night fell, Jesse tucked in with a story, his favorite about a brave kid facing monsters, his eyelids drooping as I kissed his forehead, the room soft with nightlight glow. Alone in the quiet, I paced the living room, socks whispering on the carpet. The aftermath wasn't just their reaches, it was my internal battle to enforce the new rules. Rule 1. No contact without accountability. They'd have to acknowledge the hurt, the perfume, the dismissals, the laughter, not gloss over it. Rule 2. Protect Jesse at all costs. No family reunions until he was ready, if ever. Rule 3. My peace first. I'd schedule a session with Elena tomorrow, process this. My hands clenched and unclenched, nails biting palms briefly before releasing. This fortress wasn't built overnight, it was the culmination of 2 years. Therapy notes reviewed in lamplight, courses on assertive communication practiced in mirrors, support groups where I'd role-played these exact scenarios. The next morning brought more. A knock at the door, unexpected and sharp. I peered through the peephole. Dad, standing there in his old coat, hands shoved in pockets, shoulders hunched against the chill. My heart skipped, but I didn't open it immediately. Jessie was at school drop-off soon, this couldn't spill over. Tara, I know you're in there, just talk to me. His voice muffled through the wood, pleading now, not commanding. I cracked the door, chain still latched, my body blocking the gap. Dad, what do you want? He shifted weight, foot scuffing the welcome mat. To apologize, sort of. We overreacted. The will, it's unfair, help us fix it. There it was, their agenda, not remorse. I shook my head, the chain rattling slightly. Apologize for what exactly? He faltered, eyes dropping to his shoes. For everything. The dinner, the past. Come on, your family. Family, the word lost its sting now. No, Dad, a real apology names the harm, like laughing when Lauren hurt Jessie, or ignoring my life while praising theirs. Until you can do that, the door stays closed. His face hardened, then crumpled. Tara, please, we're struggling, bills, the house. Financial ruin peeking through. I felt a pang but pushed it down. That's not my problem, I built without you, you can too. I closed the door gently, the latch clicking, and leaned against it, breathing ragged. His footsteps retreated, slow and heavy. The day wore on, their attempts morphing. Lauren's social media post, public and passive-aggressive. Blood is thicker than water, but some forget. Comments from distant relatives piled on, but I blocked her, the app closing with a satisfying tap. Mike called during my lunch break at the trauma center, where I was prepping a workshop on family dynamics. I answered this time, speaker off, my voice professional. What, Mike? He rushed in. Tara, let's meet halfway. I'll admit, we were wrong about the perfume, but contesting the will benefits everyone. Jessie's future. Jessie again weaponized, my free hand gripped the desk edge, wood smooth under fingers. No, my rules, full accountability or nothing, and leave Jessie out, you disowned him too. Silence stretched, then a sigh. You're cold, Tara. Cold, I almost laughed. No, protected, goodbye. Hang up, the beep final. By evening, the fortress solidified. I journaled again, pen flying, held the line. It hurts, but less than before. Jesse and I cooked dinner, simple tacos, his hands messy with cheese shreds, and as he chattered about school, I saw the payoff. His ease, my calm. A text from Sarah. How's the aftermath? Need backup? I replied, holding strong, thanks. This was engagement on my terms with allies, not adversaries. The phone stayed quiet after that, their energy waning, but I knew it wasn't over. Still in that quiet kitchen, laughter bubbling as Jesse helped stir. I felt the strength of my new boundaries. They weren't walls to isolate, but gates I controlled, letting in light while keeping out storm. The workshop room buzzed with a quiet energy, the kind that comes from shared purpose rather than forced small talk. as I stood at the front adjusting the microphone on the podium. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the community center, casting warm patches on the carpeted floor, where rows of chairs were filled with parents, educators, and social workers. About 50 people, their notebooks open, faces expectant. My hands smoothed the edges of my notes, the paper crinkling slightly under my fingers. A familiar ritual to steady the nerves that always fluttered before these talks. This was my first major presentation since the Wills reading 2 months ago, titled Healing Hidden Wounds, Recognizing and Addressing Child Trauma in Everyday Life. It wasn't just a lecture, it was my way of channeling the success I'd built. The certification, the consulting gigs, the stability from grandmother's inheritance, into something bigger than revenge or survival. Reclaiming the Holloway name meant turning its legacy from one of quiet cruelty to one of advocacy and healing, on my terms, without their shadows looming. But as I scanned the audience, spotting a few familiar faces from my support group, the internal realization hit. This wasn't about erasing them, it was about rewriting what our name could stand for. Starting here, in this room. I tapped the mic gently, the soft thump echoing through the speakers, and cleared my throat. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Tara Holloway, and I'm a certified child trauma specialist. Today, I want to share not just facts and strategies, but a story, my story, of how unrecognized trauma can ripple through generations, and how we can stop it. The words flowed steady, but inside my heart raced, a mix of vulnerability and empowerment. I'd practiced this in front of the mirror countless times, my reflection staring back as I paced my living room, gesturing with one hand while the other clutched a mug of tea gone cold. Jesse had even sat in once, cross-legged on the couch, clapping at the end with a grin. "You sound smart, Mama?" His encouragement lingered now, grounding me as I clicked the remote to advance the first slide. A simple diagram of trauma's effects on a child's brain, neurons firing in chaotic patterns. As I dove in, describing the science, cortisol floods, attachment disruptions, my voice gained strength, the podium's wood warm under my palms. Trauma isn't always big events like accidents or loss, I said, my eyes meeting a young mother's in the front row, her nod subtle but affirming. It can be the drip of neglect, the sting of a joke that hurts, like when a family member sprays perfume in a child's eyes and laughs it off. The room hushed further, pens scratching notes, a few gasps rippling through. I didn't name names, but the parallel to my life hung there, raw yet anonymized. My fingers tightened on the remote, clicking to a photo of anonymous artwork from therapy sessions, scribbled drawings of monsters turned into friends. I know this because I lived it. As a single mom, I saw my son Jesse withdraw after such an incident. Therapy helped him heal, education helped me understand why. Sharing this felt exposing, like peeling back skin, but it was deliberate. The positive impact started with authenticity, showing others they weren't alone. Questions came mid-talk, hands raising tentatively. A father in the back, his tie loosened, asked, "How do you spot it early? My kid's been acting out since our divorce." I leaned forward, the mic cord swaying slightly. Look for changes, withdrawal, aggression, even physical complaints like headaches. Start with open talks. "I notice you're upset. Want to share?" And seek professional help. It's not weakness, it's strength. He nodded, jotting furiously, his shoulders relaxing a fraction. Another woman, an educator with glasses perched on her nose, shared, "I've seen kids dismissed as dramatic by families. How do we advocate without overstepping?" My response came from deep study. Document patterns, collaborate with counselors. Remember, we're allies in protection. The exchanges built a dialogue, the room warming with nods and murmurs. My confidence swelling as I saw the impact, eyes lighting with understanding, postures shifting from tense to engaged, but the core realization deepened as I transitioned to interactive exercises. I passed out worksheets, the stack rustling as volunteers handed them down rows. Pair up and discuss a scenario. A child flinches at certain smells. What steps would you take? The hum rose, voices overlapping in earnest discussion. Micro-actions like validate their fear first, or introduce coping tools gradually. Walking the aisles, I overheard snippets, my sneakers soft on the carpet, pausing to offer gentle input. That's spot on, building trust is key. One pair, two moms, teared up sharing personal stories. I knelt beside them, my hand resting lightly on the chair arm. You're already taking the step by being here. That's reclaiming power. Their grateful smiles mirrored my own internal shift. This was the legacy, empowering others to break cycles, turning Holloway from a name whispered in pity to one associated with hope. As the session wrapped, I shared resources, my new website funded partly by the inheritance, offering free guides on trauma-informed parenting. Visit hollowayhealing.org. It's my way of giving back. The domain was intentional, reclaiming the family name in bold letters. Applause followed, warm and sustained, chairs scraping as people stood. A line formed for questions, hands shaking mine, firm grips, thankful squeezes. The young mother from earlier hugged me briefly. Your story? It's mine too. Thank you for speaking it. Her words choked me up, my throat tightening, but I hugged back, whispering, You've got this. Mark from brunch approached last, grinning. Killed it, Tara. This is huge. We chatted briefly, his pat on my back solid. Packing up, the room emptying, I folded worksheets, the paper whispering, and zipped my bag with a satisfying pull. The realization crystallized. Using my success wasn't flashy revenge, it was quiet transformation. The inheritance provided the platform, the site, these workshops, but my education and healing supplied the content. Holloway now meant resilience, not ridicule. Driving home, Jesse's school pickup on the horizon, I felt lighter, the car's hum syncing with my thoughts. Their downfall had been a catalyst, but this positive impact? It was mine, forged in fire, shining on its own. The road home from the community center blurred with the rhythm of the wipers swiping away a light afternoon drizzle, the droplets pattering softly on the windshield, like distant applause fading from the workshop. Jesse's school was just a few blocks away, and as I signaled the turn into the pickup line, my mind lingered on the faces in that room, the nods of understanding, the quiet thanks whispered during handshakes. It had been a high, that session, watching strangers connect with my words, seeing the Holloway name transform in real time from a burden I'd carried to a banner of hope. But now, in the quiet of the car, with the radio off and only the hum of tires on wet pavement, a deeper reflection settled in, unbidden and profound. It wasn't the applause or the website hits that brought peace. It was the internal whisper, finally clear after years of noise. My worth had always been mine, not theirs to grant or withhold. This realization unfolded slowly, like a flower blooming in my chest, as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles relaxing for the first time in what felt like forever. I pulled into the line of cars, the brake lights ahead glowing red through the rain, and let my head rest back against the seat, eyes closing for a brief moment. The scent of damp earth seeped in through the vents, grounding and fresh, a far cry from the stuffy dining room air at grandmother's. Memories flickered, not the cruel ones this time, but the quiet victories I'd claimed alone. Like the night after fleeing that reunion, Jesse asleep in his car seat when I'd first vowed to build better. My fingers had trembled then, dialing for therapy info, but now, tracing the wheel's leather seams, they were steady. Or the all-nighters poring over textbooks, highlighter cap between my teeth, the yellow streaks marking passages on self-worth that hit like revelations. Validation isn't external, one had read. I'd underlined it twice, the pen pressing hard enough to dent the page. Back then it was theory, now it was truth etched in my bones. The line inched forward, horns beeping faintly in impatience, but I felt no rush, my breath sinking with the wiper's swipe. True peace wasn't in their downfall, the social whispers I'd heard through mutual acquaintances, Lauren's boutique job lost amid scandals, Mike's house on the market, Mom and Dad's strained silences. No, that was just consequence, a side effect of the exposures I'd set in motion. The best revenge, I realized now, staring at the rain-streaked window where my reflection gazed back, calm and composed, was this. The secure world I'd crafted for Jesse and me, brick by intentional brick. A home where laughter wasn't laced with mockery, where achievements, big like my certification or small like Jesse's A in art, were celebrated with hugs, not comparisons. My worth, it bloomed from within, from choosing healing over hatred, education over excuses. A teacher waved me up, her umbrella bobbing, and Jesse dashed out, backpack bouncing, his raincoat hood flopping as he yanked the door open. Mama, we did volcanoes in science, mine erupted the highest. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the seat, but I didn't mind, pulling him into a quick hug across the console, his wet cheek pressing mine. That's amazing, buddy. Tell me all about it. As he buckled in, words tumbling out about baking soda and vinegar, the fizz mirroring his excitement, I felt the peace deepen. This was it. The everyday magic they'd never understood. No grand gestures, just consistency. Therapy check-ins where he'd share drawings without fear, my work helping others while filling our fridge without worry. The inheritance had eased the edges, sure. Better schools for him, a savings account growing, but the core was internal. My self-validation a quiet fire that no family storm could extinguish. We drove home, the rain easing to a mist, Jesse's story winding down as he munched a snack from his bag, crumbs scattering on his lap. I glanced in the rearview, catching his content smile, and my own mirrored it. The realization wrapped around me fully now. I didn't need their apology or downfall to thrive. Peace came from knowing I'd broken the cycle. Not with vengeance, but with love, for Jesse, for myself. Parking in our spot, the gravel crunching under tires, I unbuckled and turned to him. "Love you, kiddo." He grinned. "Love you more." Stepping out, hand in his, the door key turning with a click, I stepped into our haven, the warmth inside chasing away the last chill. This was self-validation, a life reclaimed, peaceful at last. Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle of family expectations, where your worth seemed defined by their approval, or lack of it? I know I did, for far too long, until I realized that true validation comes from within, from the choices we make to build better for ourselves and those we love. If my story resonated with you, the pain of cruelty, the grind of healing, the quiet triumph of self-made peace, drop your own experiences in the comments below. Have you broken free from toxic ties? What was your turning point? Sharing helps us all feel less alone. If this journey hit home, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that it's okay, more than okay, to redefine success and family on your own terms. Your story matters, and together we can inspire change. Remember, the best revenge isn't destruction, it's the unbreakable peace you create in its absence. Stay strong out there.